Good morning. I hope you're having a good day so far. We're glad you could make time. I'm Jesse Rogers, sitting in for Ben Kitili. Welcome to Kenya's premier Sunday morning political broadcast. This is Inside Politics. Now, today we take a look at how the BBI debate shaped up this week. Consensus seems to be a contentious issue. A signature collection is set to commence as from Tuesday. We assess the battle over the referendum bill changes and the views, whether dissenting or in support, that have come up in the past week. Equally, we set our eyes to the United States, aiming to answer the pertinent question of whether President Donald Trump is a threat to the rule of law and democracy. Also, we canvass the second last State of the Nation address by President Uhuru Kenyatta on Thursday. We look at the hits and misses and whether it did spark the needed emotion among Kenyans. And at the same time, it's been a dark week for Kenya in the fight against coronavirus. 146 Kenyans have been killed by COVID in the past 1 week alone. And with the developments in the NHIF, what does this mean for Kenyans, including the frontline workers? Stay with us for the next 120 minutes as we dissect the biggest political and policy issues in the Republic. And our panelists today, I'll start with Kipchumba Karuri, who's an advocate and a political commentator. Many thanks for making time. Dismas Mukua, political risk analyst. It's great to see you. Hesbon Owila also joins us. He's a political communications expert. Mark Bichachi, great to see you, communication strategist. And Gloria Oroba also joins us today. She's a youth policy analyst. Many thanks for your time, gentlemen and lady. Let's start with the BBI process. And President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga are next week expected to launch the process of collecting 1 million signatures to kickstart the referendum process. According to Raila Odinga, the constitutional amendment draft bill will be gazetted next week, and no new changes will be incorporated into the document. Let's listen to that report by Jeff Kirui.
The process to amend the constitution through a referendum officially kicks off next week, as ODM leader Raila Odinga says the constitutional amendment draft bill will be ready for gazettement. This will be after a final meeting on Tuesday that will kickstart the collection of 1 million signatures needed to guarantee a referendum.
Now we will be doing the launch of the signature collection sometimes next week.
That journey has commenced. Major changes are needed to our constitution and other laws so as to lay the foundation for the prosperous future that we seek. As a people, we must seize this constitutional moment, as I have said.
We think that this matter, as already mentioned before, should be concluded by latest April next year.
Odinga spoke Friday when he met a section of coastal region MPs who presented proposals they say they had submitted to the BBI task force but were omitted in the final report.
Watu wamekuwa wakizungumza ya kuwa mambo ya port na mambo mengine. Tumehakikisha ya kuwa mambo ya blue economy yatakuwa yako ndani ya katiba. Kama baba alivyoweza kusema ya kwa hani mapendekezo ambayo tayari tulikuwa tumeyapendekeza pale mbeleni. Na sasa ni kuhakikisha tu yako ndani ya masala haya.
At least we can have to provide a manner and procedure on how the historical land injustices are going to be addressed. We are also having some issues with the blue economy, which we want to have a legal framework on how the issues of blue economy are going to be handled.
We're not bringing in substantive new issues, but we're basically just looking at issues which are there already in the report.
Odinga is set to meet with Council of Governors, women reps and members of County Assembly by Tuesday to address their concerns. Several groups have emerged seeking to have the BBI document amended, among them religious groups. But Odinga has reiterated that the door is now shut for any new ideas to the document.
We recommend that a national delegates conference be convened so that the outstanding issues are discussed and consensus achieved so that BBI process does get us more united and a cohesive country.
2 years now, the clergy themselves had an opportunity to express their views about those issues. So, you know, this is a democratic society. They are entitled to their views. Those are their views, you know, but we go by the views of the majority of our people.
The collection of 1 million signatures will take 1 month. Then the ball will be in IBC's court to verify the signatures. Thereafter, the draft bill will be submitted to the 47 counties, where at least 24 counties should pass the bill. Jeff Kirui, KTN News.
Well, Jeff Kirui, thanks for that report. So it's clear consensus is definitely a contentious issue. According to Raila Odinga, the document will be dealt with as it is, maybe just some editorial changes here and there. And I think that would be a good point to start. I'd like to bring in Dismas Mukua, first of all, into the conversation. It's good to see you once again, sir. Bearing in mind what's happened in the past 1 week, it seems the stage is set for contested referendum. What's your input on this?
Well, you know, there are two ways to look at this issue. The first one is that there are people who genuinely want amendments to the BIB proposals because they serve our national and public interest. And there is another group which wants to derail the entire process. Now, in my view, what President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga need to do, for the first group of people who are very genuine about additions or amendments that are consistent with our national and public interest, such additions must be accommodated within the time frame, provided it doesn't interfere with the timeline. Because some people have come up with amazing ideas, a basket of ideas that we must incorporate. And I've been described as an Article 1 analyst. So people have come up with very good ideas. They did not have the opportunity to do that. So representing Mura and Wanjiko, let those ideas be captured. Then you have the second level of people who have been invited times above number to make presentations, but they flip the bird on President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. They actually say that BBI is a waste of time. So this second group is one that we must ignore and treat with the highest level of contempt, because they were invited to the table. They were told there's a position here. We want to come up with ideas to take Kenya to the next level. And they described the two architects as conmen, as people who don't have our interest at heart. And now they're coming at the end of the day when the train is about to leave the station. They're waving a red flag and saying, wait a minute, we can see imminent danger. And these are the people who want to delay this process, number one. Or number two, they want to be invited to the negotiation table so that they can present their ideas. And they're afraid that with the BBI momentum, 2022 is not going to be a walk in the park. So these are the people who are happy with the status quo, and the BBI is going to rock the status quo. And this should be, you know, a very strong warning in future that when there's a national process which is supposed to heal the nation, which is supposed to stop violence every 5 years, and you've been invited to the table to come and give ideas, you cannot term the architects as conmen, and you cannot treat the process with contempt. Then you come at the end of the day when the train is leaving the station, and you start shouting from the top of Mount Kenya or Mount Sugoi or wherever it is, and you're making a lot of noise saying that this process is a non-starter.
All right, Dismas Mukua, I hear you, but let me bring in Gloria Oroba, who's very vocal about the youth issue. But I won't ask you about the youth agenda in the BBI this time round. A couple of leaders have given their proposals, including governors this particular week when they met in Naivasha a few days ago. Some of the proposals include immunity from prosecution should public funds get stolen under their watch. When they retire, apart from receiving monthly benefits, they want an office and support staff paid for by taxpayers. Also, they faulted the proposal requiring a male gubernatorial aspirant to pick a running mate of the opposite gender. Are these selfish concerns in your views?
In my views, when you have 50 million Kenyans that you're trying to unite, it's a very tall order, because not all 50 million Kenyans are going to think like Raila Odinga or like Uhuru Kenyatta or like William Ruto. And so if you genuinely are thinking of uniting these 50 million Kenyans, then you genuinely must bring them to the table and listen to their suggestions, whether they're mediocre, whether they're selfish, whether they're this or whether they're that. And then the point here is, after everybody has felt that indeed I have been listened to, whether it is the bishops or the clergies, whether it is the people with disability, whether it is the youth, all these constituencies of people, when you actually have listened to what they're trying to say, then you might be able to start a conversation about this is actually not possible. We can't really give you all this money that you guys are asking for after retirement. This is selfish because of this and that. That is actually really the purpose of building bridges. And that is really, when you're talking about uniting people, that is the process. The process is not about two people coming together, creating a document with their bystanders and their cheerleaders, and then bringing it to 50 million people and saying, this is the document that we feel is good for you guys. So for me, I think it's not even about the governors asking for their selfish concerns about, making sure that they're not going to be arrested for the corrupt activities that they have been engaging in. It's not even about the people with disability, who, by the way, as much as I speak vocally for the youth, I have also had conversations with the people with disability, and I've been asking them, why is it that you're only pushing for nominations? Why is it that you're only pushing to be given things? How about you push for a policy that will make the environment good for you to participate in elective positions? So I just think the disconnect that we're having here is that people, the 50 million Kenyans who are living in this country, are not feeling like they're being heard. They're being told the door is closed. We had a 14-member task force that has decided for you, and now we are taking this thing for a referendum. And Jesse, my position on the youth is that the Building Bridges initiative does not really speak to the youth agenda. The youth agenda being, when you're talking about adding senators, it does not talk about putting a cap on those senators, like, if you're going to have nominations, or if you're going to have one female or one, they don't bring it down to the youth constituency. When you're talking about the expansion of the executive, it's the same thing. They're not ensuring that they're bringing it down to the youth constituencies. So for me, I've been saying it is important that we reach to a point where we are going to have a conversation that will bring us to a consensus document, where everybody has felt heard, and everybody has felt that, okay, we might not get 100% of what we asked for, but at least one or two things might be considered. And that's the problem. They're shutting the door to that consensus document.
Okay, looking at what BBI was meant to do, it was meant to heal a wounded nation. Now, Kipchumba, the last time I checked, you're the pastor in this particular group of panelists, and I'd like you to answer to the question that was raised by the Catholic Church, who seem to be opposed to the proposal of a powerful presidency, which doesn't augur well with the principle of inclusivity. I mean, in 2010 referendum, the church was on the no side. Now, I ask you this, did the process sort of ignore the views of the church? Are their concerns well placed? What's your take on this?
Thank you, Jesse Rogers. First of all, I begin by wishing a happy birthday to the great son of Othaya, the former president, Mwai Kibaki, the greatest that we have had so far. And secondly, to come back to your question, as a practicing former Sunday school teacher, I tremendously agree and abide by the position by my bishop. And secondly, there is something that we must always situate as we talk about this constitution. A constitution is a bargaining document. It is the document that brings all the 43 nation tribes to the state that is Kenya. You cannot for a moment exclude anybody. And then the other thing is this: why are we so keen in creating a constitution without constitutionalism? We have walked this path before. We were here when we mutilated the Lancaster Constitution, when we introduced other things, when we introduced a one-party state. That was the creation of a constitution without constitutionalism. When we talk about an imperial president, the danger is this, Jesse. The world all over is moving to devolving power because we realize that every man has inherent weaknesses. Therefore, we cannot give all power to one man. And having been there, Kenyans realize that the more we re-centralize power, the longer we are from solving the issue of putting premium in political power. How do you tell us today we are reducing the adverse impacts of politics on our economy by creating a lot of premium in one seat? What you cause is that you make it an issue of a matter of life and death, that I must be the president so that I appoint the prime minister, so that I control the judiciary, so that I have an hand in parliament. What we ought to do, Jesse, we need to move to a level whereby nobody cares who becomes president. If today you are to ask anybody in the streets, who is the president of Ethiopia, for example, the good lady, nobody knows unless you are interested. And as public scholars, we have a duty to tell the country and to educate the masses that the constitution-making process, it should be as inclusive as possible. You cannot, for example, call 3,000 people and say that is a representation of Kenyans. There is a good reason why we took 22 years to come up with the constitution to 2010. There were various initiatives. There was the Ufungamano initiative. There were several other things. And my question is this: if we were to situate the current BBI debate within a constitutional framework, the first question will be this: where does BBI lie within Article 255, Article 256, Article 257? Those are the places we first of all need to begin by situating. I elected Uhuru Kenyatta as a voter 2 times in the last election, not for him to amend for me the constitution. I elected him on what he had promised in the manifesto. Jubilee did not have a constitutional reform as a manifesto. And the same way, how does it augur with democracy, Jesse, that people rejected Raila Odinga, but today, through the back door, through what we will call, we have hosted Article 1 and allowed the person who people rejected at the ballot to be the one who we are taking out.
All right.
How have we sunk?
Hezbollah Wheeler, I'd like your right of response there. Even as you add up on that, I'd definitely want you to give us your input on whatever's been seen in this past week. On one side, we're seeing those who are raising concerns sort of being framed as trying to delay the process, or they're against the change of status quo. On the other side, they're also throwing jabs as well. What do you make of this?
First of all, let me respond to Kipchumba that Jubilee did not have a manifesto that entailed changing the constitution. President Kenyatta was elected on a Jubilee ticket, but he became the president of Kenya. So if he's solving Kenyans' problems, it doesn't have to originate from a Jubilee manifesto. And part of the Jubilee manifesto is already enshrined in the Big Four agenda. And he is doing that. So if he moves beyond the Jubilee agenda to unite Kenyans, provide a framework for a Kenya that will be better going forward, I don't see the problem. If people in Jubilee see a problem in that, then they have a problem with what is good for Kenya. Then secondly, I think we may want to go back to what Dismas has said, that there are 2 voices outside here. They are dissenting voices that are voices of reason, and they want to be constructive in this process, in which case they are pointing out gaps in the document that can be improved without fundamental changes in that document. But then there are dissenting voices that are just making noise for nuisance sake. One, they were not part of this process, and they went public disagreeing with something they had not seen. Now that they've seen the document, they are finding things that are neither here nor there to bring on board and say that we need a consensus. And I think it is probably unfortunate if all of us start saying that we need this in the BBI, we need this in the BBI. I think the BBI was instituted to address 9 key things. And the constructive voices are basically those voices that are telling us, among the 9 key things, there is a gap in how we are sorting this. And if those are editorial issues and we sort those issues and there is clarity on how these 9 things are being sorted, then we are good to go. And we cannot sit at one place, mark timing, saying that we need consensus. I'll tell you for free, Jesse, in a democracy, if you want to bring consensus, and the consensus that we are talking about here is not consensus of people agreeing and disagreeing and coming up with a constructive position. What people are looking for here is to bring in their vested interest. Everyone wants to bring in their vested interest.
Right.
We'll end up with a bastard document that has almost all things that people want, yet what we need is a document that will take Kenya progressively forward.
Okay,
now,
Mark Bichachi. Let me bring in Mark Bichachi first of all. I want you to at least give your take.
A minute, please.
Okay.
Jesse, we need to remind Esbon one thing. On the onset of the BBI, there is something Raila Odinga, alias and Joe said, and actually Joe said this in Owila's county in Migori. He said BBI in Awenyewe. We've been reminded time without
but we're doing in Kenya.
as its owner. So you cannot invite people as though it is a private party. Amending the constitution of Kenya belongs to 48 million people.
All right, Bichachi, what's your take on this?
A question for Hezbon Owila. Why are we in a hurry? What is the timeline? Who put up for us a timeline that we must build these bridges in 3 months before elections? This is a process.
Just allow me to respond.
Let's go to Bichachi first, kindly, before you respond. Bichachi, just talk to us kindly.
I urge my fellow analysts to procure the services of their teachers who told them to read documents before they comment. First and foremost, to say that the electoral process is to the exclusion of youth is to obviously state that you've not taken time to read the document, because we know there is a requirement that in every political party list that is submitted to the IEBC, there must be a certain percentage of youth, women, and people living with disabilities. So to say that there is no representation of youth just tells me that you've not taken time to read. The second issue is the issue of what did Uhuru Kenyatta promise before he was elected president. I remember very, very well, we sat on this very show. Kipchumba, in fact, was seated to my left, and he insisted that one of the ways this country was going to achieve peace during that period was for Uhuru Kenyatta to speak to Raila Odinga. Now, Uhuru Kenyatta responded to the country and said that he would only speak to Raila Odinga after the election. It therefore means that the social contract that Uhuru Kenyatta signed with the people of Kenya included a meeting with the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And there's nothing wrong with such a handshake. But two, I must also remind Kenyans of the basic facts, that the BBI report was not written in a conjoined bedroom between Uhuru and Raila. It was written, number one, using the voices and the opinions and the memoranda of thousands of Kenyans who took the time to take their views to the BBI sittings. And they were not all of them called Raila, and they were not all of them called Uhuru. To say that these people's views, so reflected in the BBI, are not something to consider is something I find, frankly, quite sad. But lastly, I must disabuse the use of the term an imperial presidency. An imperial president is one who has allocated himself infinite access to power and the finances of a country. I wonder how the president will be imperial when he is no longer controlling 85% of the budget, but now rather 65%. I wonder how a president will be imperial when he is forced constitutionally to delegate some of his responsibilities to a prime minister who will be elected, by the way, popularly by the people. Because he will not sit somewhere in State House and imagine my name and make me prime minister if I'm not a leader of the majority party in parliament and therefore a leader of the majority of the voices of people, of the people of the Republic of Kenya in parliament.
All right.
You cannot create a dictatorship by creating a democracy. But that said, all those arguments will not matter to the people who are against BBI. Because for in truth, their fear is simple. They fear a referendum. They do not want one. Which is why you will hear them say, what is the urgency? You will hear them say that we cannot cure diseases and do a referendum at the same time. Simply because all of these issues, 90% of them are born of the fear that if a referendum happens, it will favor certain people.
Okay.
Jesse, just a question. Jesse, because he has talked about the youth being represented. I want to ask Bichache, if we are well represented, how is it that we don't even have a cabinet secretary that falls under the youth category? How is it that we don't have any state agency that is led by the youth? And even within the Building Bridges initiative, how is it that they were able to actually put together 14 members of the task force and they were not able to come up with one person who was within the youth category? So when you tell me that they are all...
Can I answer?
Mark Bichache.
Is that
okay, we'll definitely give you a chance to answer. Gloria, I hear your question, and you had also forwarded one to Hesbon Owila. Right of reply is coming after this short break. We have to pay the bills. I hope you guys understand. But when we come back, apart from the right of reply, we take a look at President Uhuru Kenyatta's State of the Nation address that happened this Thursday. Kenyans with a lot of expectations tuned in, trying to listen to the way forward by President Uhuru Kenyatta. Were your expectations met? Did the address canvass the expectations in general? We come back with this. Do stay with Inside Politics.